Football is in crisis. The game we love is in the grip of a malaise which, unless it is arrested, could influence any number of... What? All right, okay. Same. Football is in crisis. The game we love is in the grip of a group of Malays who, unless they are arrested, could influence a large number of Premiership goalkeepers. Yes, indeed, football is in need of urgent medical attention. But what exactly is the problem with the British game? Well, it's easy to list some of the troubles. Ray Stubbs, Carlton Palmer, Eric Hall, Ray Parlour's hair, any advert with David Ginola in it, Eileen Drury, the idea that Jap Stam is worth £10 million, all those women that pretend to like the game these days, all those men that pretend to like the game these days, club phone lines, David Pleat summaries, and of course, David Beckham. But it's not quite as simple as that. These things are just the symptoms. If we want to get to the root cause, we're going to have to dig a little bit deeper. But I'll tell you one thing, if it wasn't for the self-delusion, we'd be the best in the world. Of course, some clubs are in rude health, but for the rest of us, the outlook is not quite so encouraging. Indeed, for one or two clubs, the prognosis is hopeless. In fact, that's the sound of Man City going down through the division so fast, they've broken the sound barrier. And this bloke's just heard he's got the QPR job. Here is Southampton showing why they've challenged for major honours in none of the last few decades. Still, they'll be there or thereabouts at the end of the season, near the bottom. To save money in Germany, injured players are put down. Also in Germany, penalty deciders. If all the players have taken their penalties and the score is still level, penalties continue, but this time taken by each team's nominated local newsreader. Either that or this is one of Ron Nodes' dreams. Or nightmares. And here's White of Rotherham, a man who's missed so many chances, he's actually got too small for his boots. Seriously though, this is another one of those gestures of support for protesting dockers and firemen, etc. Except this one's for the Rotherham Guild of Chiropodists. That's it, don't forget your insole, Jason. Rushton and Diamonds, at home here, made a huge error in scheduling this match on the same night as a local pop concert. Not only was the crowd disappointing, but this was inevitable.
And, well, I think one of the floodlights is... and they've all gone out.
Never compete for Watts with Jean-Michel Jarre.
1-0 down. Maybe this is planned.
Andy Cole said he wished there'd been a floodlight failure when this happened. Mind you, that just shows how stupid he is. It's played on a Saturday afternoon. Now, Andy, this is a night match. This is where you want your floodlight failure. Apparently, this shot went so wide that Barry Venison actually wanted to use it as a jacket. Money, of course, buys foreign stars, and foreign stars bring skill and success. Ruud Gullit blamed this one on the grass. Still, that's the Dutch for you. Ronaldo's success means that buck teeth are back in, and this man can once again proudly claim, I am Janet Street Porter's dad. But for all its money, it's still the working man's game. It's a game of simple pleasures, though woe betide the man who gets the fish and chips in without salt and vinegar. But it's business as usual at the United megastore. Look at those till rolls move. An own goal, and a player who would have died from embarrassment, except that he completely missed when he tried to kick the bucket. What money does bring is the curse of advertising. Ever wondered how David Ginola gets that shiny wet look? Well, the bloke on the right just gobs and goes. Although it is getting a bit out of hand. I mean, how much did the Göttinger group pay Balakov to do this? Some clubs have maximised their sponsorship with clever innovation. Here we have Stevenage playing away at Rushden and Diamonds. They actually changed their sponsor during the game. In fact, at this game, they were individually sponsored by all 57 Heinz varieties. Constant shirt changes meant that the match lasted for 4 days. Although, to be fair, one was a bank holiday Monday.
Wow, a most extraordinary event. And certainly the female supporters here at Nem Park are enjoying this. We can tell from the wolf whistles and cat calls. It's an unexpected bonus for them, and they haven't even had to pay extra for it.
Football makes money because it's fashionable. Although, to be fair, I should say that the Spice Girls were going to games years ago. Although at a much more humble level. In those days, Posh went out with Steve Bull. This Spanish team bought this hedge from the owners of Aintree Racecourse. They were a bit surprised when they got it home to find that it was still full of ex-jockeys from past Grand Nationals. Oh look, there's Tommy Stack, isn't it? How many times have I told you I am not doing this alleged joke? Now, many of you will be wondering why there is a veterinary clinic in a hospital, but you have to remember, of course, that this is our special football hospital, and this is for all the teams that have nicknames that are animals. So that's Derby County, the Rams, Leicester City, the Foxes, Millwall, the Lions, Crystal Palace, the Eagles, Tottenham Hotspur, the Lame Ducks, Everton, the Pig's Ears, and of course Brighton, the Spanish Donkeys, because they get beaten every week. Now, the other thing about these teams is often when they have animals as a nickname, they also have animals as mascots. And we, the British, do we have a laugh at those mascots? Do they tickle us during half? Oh, they get me. Oh, they're very funny. I think they're people actually dressed in costumes, but they might be real. Who knows?
Towards Kavanagh. Oh, what a finish!
Get in, you
Graham
beauty!
Kavanagh. What a cracking strike. And didn't he enjoy that?
Actually, a lot of the poor saps that have to play these club mascots are ex-soap stars. This one here, for instance, recognise her? Yep, it's the little woman with the big lips herself, Ivy Brennan, Tilsley as was. Actually, this one has a happy ending. They've just brought a starter home on Westbury Park. Mark Tudor? Now, I must admit, I've actually got some sympathies with this keeper. It looks like a bad mistake, but imagine it, you're just about to stop the ball, and then, out of the corner of your eye, who do you see but ex-arsonist and licensee of the Dagmar, James Wilmot Brown, dressed as an 8-foot furry robin. See, if you get Paul Daniels to do the cup draw, you can't be sure what's going to come out the hat. George Graham's exit from Leeds was a dignified one. And here, rather bizarrely, is a seagull on the pitch at the Celta Vigo v Real Madrid game. Eric Cantona would have been very confused. Where's the troller? He would say, only not in quite as good French as that. Seagulls, of course, are scavengers and hang around wherever there's rubbish. This one must have seen that one of the teams were in light blue shirts and presumed Man City were playing. Ow! It's not known whether the seagull bite affected that player, but afterwards he took to living on a cliff top and scavenging chips from bins. He was finally found dead on a beach covered in oil. Now, this is something you don't see very often at a football match. Graham Hick's Test career. Here's a thought out of the blue. I wonder whatever happened to Sammy Lee. And here's the Barcelona team mascot, although sadly he never came back from a pre-season friendly in Korea. You think that food's bad at English football grounds? Try Spain. Now that's what I call undercooked. Mind you, the players dealt manfully with this chicken burger, although footballers, of course, will take any chance they can to try and pick up a bird. And here's a clip from Colchester you may have seen before.
Here comes that blessed dog again. John Gilchrist to Cook.
The goalkeeper at the far end is Chick Brodie.
For Brian Gibbs to chase, there's hardly any chance here.
The dog you may recognise as Shep.
And still that pooch was
Actually,
in it.
this is rather a tragic tale. That incident actually ended his career. He was replaced by another Shep and we weren't told. But these days, rogue celebrity dogs are the least of the FA's worries.
Brodie seems to have been hurt by that.
Yes, English football has its problems, but we're not as far down the slippery slope as some other countries. I mean, I took you through Scotland's problems, but we've only got an hour. And then there's the third world. I mean, poor dear plucky little Cameroon. They're still relying on dietitians, fitness experts, penalty-taking practice. You'd think they'd never heard of faith healing.
Eye of newt and ear of toad, nose of bat and chin of dog. He's called Beardsley. You'll spot him easily.
Hello.
It's Mr. Hancock, isn't it?
That's right.
You do realise, Mr. Hancock, that the sort of faith I deal in costs £50 an hour.
Oh, right. Up front, you said. Yeah. There you go.
Thank you. Faith can achieve anything, Mr. Hancock. It can turn the tiniest lost cause into the biggest success. Faith can move mountains. In your absolute heart of hearts, what is the one single thing you most want to achieve?
I want England to beat Germany on penalties.
Get out of here! Get out at once! What do you take me for, a miracle worker?
Ah, the Germans. They have their problems too, you know. This bloke's just found out what his manager wrote about him in his World Cup diaries, about how he refused to consult Eileen von Drury. I know what you're thinking about the Germans. Precision, reliability, ruthlessness, efficiency. I expect this bloke's probably Swiss or something. Well, he's got skiing gloves on. Oh, look, they even have those useless World Cup Vauxhall ads in Germany too. Mind you, this manager was never going to get sponsored by a deodorant company, was he? Hamburg's Miss Wet T-shirt 1996. Under a radical new scheme in Germany, officials will be able to go full-time, but they will also be expected to wash the kit. Non-fast colours, mate. It's always therapeutic to take the mickey out of the Germans. The trouble is, though, they've got something that we don't have. Discipline. And who's in charge of applying discipline in the British game? Ah. Here we are.
L, B, F, H, V, H, is it Y, L, R?
I feel a little bit sorry for referees. They're so unpopular. And they only really need to do one thing. If they want to be popular, just do one thing for us. Stop turning up at our football games.
F.
Here's a truly sweet moment when a newly hatched referee tries to walk for the first time. There was a tragedy later in the match when his mother was shot by huntsmen. People don't normally like referees, but if you've seen Bambi, you can't fail to love this one. These days, players have so many ways of trying to fool the ref. Here a goal is disallowed, and then suddenly given again. The reason? The tried and tested method, the waterworks. Hold on, who's this? Is it Jurgen? Actually, when this happened at Old Trafford, Man United got a penalty and the keeper was sent off. And when this happened at Old Trafford, Man United got 14 penalties. Sometimes referees can only survive terrible decisions like this by doing one thing. At the last minute, they play their joker. You don't believe refs take sides? Well, look at this neat little 1-2 between the referee and one of the players. A handy assist for anyone who had the ref in their fantasy team.
Jones goes for the 1-2.
Mind you, it's lovely, isn't it, to see those training ground manoeuvres coming off.
And that's deflected off him as the clearance comes to him and straight into the back of the net.
Now this is the most unexpected tackle since Fatima Whitbread did a streak at the European Championships. There's now so little cash in the Romanian game that the refs no longer get bribed with whores. Instead, they get a kiss from a bloke in a hat and 3 seconds with a rented bunch of flowers. Oh yeah, and one of Colin Montgomery's old tank tops. But I digress. Let's see another ref or two get hit in the face. In case you're worrying, it was okay. The ball was not damaged. The whistle was recovered naturally 3 days later, although there was much amusement in the ref's house when every time he farted they thought Roger Whittaker was round there. You see, Paolo, that's the way to do it. Let the ball do the work. How many fingers am I holding up? 12? Yes, that's fine. You have to feel sorry for refs and linesmen, though. Many of them had ambitions to be professional footballers themselves, and may well have been, if it wasn't for the fact that they couldn't stand up. Mind you, that never stopped Paul Gascoigne. Go on, Gazza. Here's a linesman being knocked out. Actually, the impact of this blow was so hard that he suffered from permanent double vision and had to become a referee. Quick, I can see perfectly well. Put some vinegar in there. They can be bad-tempered buggers, though. This one doesn't want the match ball, doesn't want a pizza, and doesn't even want the linesman to tell him the one about the 3 nuns and the pop-up toaster. And refs need to be versatile. According to guidelines, a good ref should, if needs be able to remove his own appendix without interrupting the flow of the game. This one makes quite a good fist of it. I think he's in post-op now. Surgery is, however, always a complex manoeuvre, requiring the correct instruments. This fellow's fallen for the old mistake. Yes, he's attempted his own vasectomy with a masonry chisel. Ooh, mind his foot. This incident shows in an instant why football has so much trouble recruiting refs from the clown community. Now steady on though, this is just not good enough. 6 bottles thrown at the referee, and not one of them hits him. This referee's whistle doesn't even work. Well, you know what it's like when you're desperate for a pee. A goalkeeper from New Zealand tries the hacker to ward off this free kick. Bingo! Patrick Vieira of Arsenal seems to have a few eye problems too, as he fails to spot the ceiling here. You'd think with his keen continental footballing brain he'd figure that something had to be holding up the rest of the stadium. Alan White of Luton was a big fan of Patrick Battiston. Unfortunately, his keeper is a big fan of Harold Schumacher.
Oh, I don't think a striker could have done it better.
There have been calls lately for ex-players to become referees. Looks like that goalkeeper's a good candidate.
It may well have been David Beckham's sending off which turned the game against Argentina, but the fact still remains we were level at the end of extra time, and it was just that our goalie let in more penalties than the opposition's goalie. And it was the same thing in Italia 90 and the same thing in Euro 96, and it was one of our keepers that let in a goal from the halfway line in the Cup Winners' Cup final. I just think that maybe we've hung on to this myth about the invincibility of British goalkeepers for too long. Poor fellas, they've got dropsy.
It was a mistake for Notts County to employ a former Buckingham Palace guardsman in goal. A good goalie always looks after his near post. And the far post, well, that'll take care of itself, won't it? Remember, a goalie can always use his skill to play his way out of trouble. That's if he's got any.
He's in even more trouble now, and that's Lee Hughes.
And this is a real double whammy, a mistake like that and conceding a goal to a ginner.
Well, Alan Kelly practising his five-a-side skills.
Let's have a look at that in slow motion, just like the goalkeeper does every night in his dreams. Ginner! This keeper has the speed of a gazelle, and unfortunately the goalkeeping skills of one as well.
McCarthy! Well, he's played for a few clubs.
He's svelte.
But not many of his goals will have come.
Bristol City fans have low self-esteem. Look, this one wants to be a ginner. This effort won save of the season in Switzerland. I think he's the bloke who let the Nazi gold in as well. And the tears naturally flow as he realises the rest of his career is going to be spent in Scotland. Dave Watson of Barnsley performs his impression of Eric Cantona to rile Palace fans. And lightning strikes twice as he clashes with the unlucky Matthew Simmons, who's making a slow recovery from the last time. Simmons must feel picked on. Here, once again, he's thrown out of the ground. Now, keep an eye on this goalie. No, not this one, he makes a good save. The one at the other end. There he comes. Fast asleep. A terrible warning of the dangers inherent in facing a team managed by George Graham for 90 minutes. You never guess what, lads, I just dreamt of letting a goal. I did? Oh, great. Where's Cindy Crawford gone?
Beresford then with this goal kick. Oh dear, that's gone straight into the path of Rodney Rowe.
Oh, another double whammy. Goal like that and your name's Marlon.
I don't think Marlon Beresford meant it to go there.
No, not me.
Rodney Rowe certainly meant it to go in the back of the net.
Here's a terrible mistake by Fraser Digby this time, allowing Paul Merson to score. Merson only had time for one touch. If he'd taken any more, his agent would have sold him on to another club before he had time to shoot.
It's a dreadful aberration by Fraser Digby. But such sloppy work from Fraser Digby. There's no other word for it, I'm afraid.
Marlon and then Fraser. What is it with these keepers? Do you remember Perry Digweed? Goalkeepers have so much to remember. It's no wonder that sometimes they forget. This one here forgot not to kick the ball straight at Luis Enrique's leg. And how many times have you seen this at a football match? The bloke behind you spoils everything. Yep, he shaved his head, but you've guessed it, he's a ginner! This keeper actually moved ahead of Chris Armstrong in the Golden Boot Award with this goal. At Wimbledon, it would have counted as a tap-in. He kicked it so hard, I can only think he thought it was David Mellor's head. Wish it had been. And here's the Italian Mike Yarwood Cup, where players have to pretend to be someone else. The keeper here's being John Hartson, and there's Isle Berkovic. He's off again. It's like watching women's tennis, only not as butch. They don't seem to have got the hang of whom they're meant to give the ball to. Everton actually bought this keeper. They were desperate for someone who could put the ball on the centre forward's head. Easy does it. And this keeper reacts in the time-honoured fashion after hearing that Liverpool were interested in him. And yep, he'll be putting on the shirt at Anfield. Mind you, at least he stayed near his own goal. Here are two keepers in the same penalty area, which is one more than normal, and two more than when Jim Leighton's playing. And he won't get run over in that shirt.
Appleby's work.
Meanwhile, at the other end,
Socks off this afternoon. Can he conjure up something right at the end for Swansea? Jenkins. No handball. Simpson. Barnett on the break. There goes McLeish.
well, it's always the same, isn't it? You go for a pie at half-time, there's a queue, you can't always get back, and you miss a goal. Having no keeper at all is obviously a risky formation. It looks like the traditionalists were right. And here's one game where the experiment of a 0-4-4-3 formation paid off for a change. In fact, neither team played a keeper. The footage is actually from the Scottish League. It's another 0-0. Goalkeepers always have a fund of excuses. For instance, it was their turn to score. I've just washed my hands. And best of all, I'm Dave Besant. No, I'm Dave Besant. Our goalkeepers evidently aren't cutting the mustard. But what about our forwards? Can they compete with Europe's best? Oh, congratulations, it's a boy. Or are they suffering from a collective amnesia? Have they simply forgotten how to score? For instance, whatever happened to Steve Stone? Apparently he's been biding his time in the lower divisions. Here he is against Reading. A bit more biding needed, I think, Steve.
For a comeback goal from Steve Stone, and everyone here just can't believe
to come back this. And here Wrexham have 3 bites at the world's biggest cherry.
Right across the face of goal. Another chance now. McGregor. Connolly, surely. Oh, dear.
They'll be singing in the valleys tonight.
Still can't score.
Well, people in South Wales hate Wrexham. It's actually something we've started to export to the rest of the world. This bloke studied for 3 years at the Luther Blissett School of Excellence, which is 2 years more than Luther did himself. When he saw this miss, Brian Robson immediately withdrew his £10 million bid for the player concerned. And upped it to £15 million. This player had only the keeper to beat, and his own innate lack of ability. Another terrible miss here. But if you look at it from another perspective, it's a terrible miss. If at first you don't succeed of making a tit of yourself, try again. And here's an effort from the Israeli Jeff Thomas. Still, what do you expect from a country whose most famous international is Dana International? And let's not forget the South Americans. Here's Ronaldo last season making medical history by actually experiencing a flash forward to the World Cup final. Big Tony Adams comes close here to a goal at Highbury.
Tony Adams joining the attack.
Unfortunately, Arsenal were playing at Blackburn.
I know you're 4-1 up. I know you're in the cup final. I know you might win the league, but are you sure?
You only said joining the attack. I think you could loosely describe that one, can't you?
Alcohol, of course, is one of the great curses of the modern game. If this poor fellow doesn't get it injected straight into his bloodstream, he's going to be in no fit state to turn out for Borough. This is his urine sample, a staggering 72% proof. I'll just put it down here next to Brian Robson's. And of course, Gazza's. When will they ever learn?
Oh no, another mascot, another soap star. This time, EastEnders ashen-faced medical man, Dr. Leg. Get him off, Doc. And here, Lee Dixon panics when he finds himself still on the pitch after an hour of a game and decides to send himself off. Enjoy the scenery and I'll tell you some more. I'll tell you what, Derby's giant furry ram. Yeah? Coronation Street's rotund jovial barman, Fred G. Ask him. Well, that's what I was told.
Best.
George Best recently married an air hostess. Perfect. A woman who's trained to bring you a trolley of drinks at regular intervals.
So unlike George Best.
Another one, right, OK. The Cuddly Crooked Spire at Chesterfield. Murder victim, kidney donor and love-struck young Moroccan, Samir Rashid. I don't know what he expects to find down there. Deirdre, maybe. And this is how, for 6 months, Paul Merson saw the assistant referee. Southend's furry shrimper, Rowley from the Queen Vic. Oh look, here are Gazza's half-time poppadoms. And here is Gazza's half-time sambuca to go with them. Either that or Windsor Castle's come to watch a game.
The fans, of course, are one of the reasons that the English game has such a bad name. Some of them are even madder than Ronaldo. Look at these poor, deluded souls. This man actually thinks that Scotland will make the second phase of the next World Cup. This woman is convinced that one day an Englishman will be in the starting lineup for Chelsea. And this poor fellow here thinks that if Zoe Ball bumped into Arthur Albiston, she would actually recognise him. And over there, a man who thinks that Graham Taylor will be the next England manager. Hi, Graham. And this poor fellow, who actually believes that the ZDS Cup was a major contribution to the game in this country. Actually, I was hoping to meet Pierre van Hooijdonk in here, but he's checked out. Apparently, he wanted to transfer to a more ambitious hospital.
The price of Arsenal season tickets has meant fans making economies elsewhere.
Well, that is my definition of a nutter.
That's a full Monty, isn't it?
I hope not.
And this will clear the verruca up, will it, Eileen? Here's a lesson for any youngsters watching. Never let a man with 2 fingers missing ruffle your hair. It's very difficult for famous people when they drop out of the limelight. At this Leicester game, Willie Thorne gets extremely angry because nobody's asked him for his autograph yet. He's got a piece of paper, it's just nobody's got a pen. Or wants it. Willie seems to think that all-seater stadia are to blame. I think it's because he's not very good at snooker. The following week, Willie offered a free set of pans to anyone prepared to speak to him. With limited success. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, they're normally £8. These pads are normally £8. Stainless steel, no trouble cleaning them. You can steam, you can boil, whatever you like. Look, I've thrown a frying pan with them. £8 your pans, but free to you. Come on, it's solid state. Roberto Baggio's mum insists his dad brings this scarf to all games in case it gets nippy. Eric Cantona's film career has sparked the interest of Finidi George. His busy schedule, however, meant that he combined this match with an audition for High Noon. He didn't get the part. Ah, the classic Saturday. Football and the Dukes of Hazzard. Ye, as they say, ha. And this celebration's a little bit like the one Peter Beagrie used to do at Everton, except Peter used a motorbike. With central defenders, though, it's just instinctive. You see a forward, shove your elbow in his face. This free calls at weekend lark's ruining football. Ah, let's all be David Unsworth asking his wife to pass the salt. Here's a brilliant young Italian juggling a toilet roll. Apparently he can also head a cistern 40 yards and bend a bidet around a wall. How many times do I have to tell you, not bald, follically challenged? You'd have to be mad to play in conditions like these. This is actually Brazil playing the next game on the pitch at Italia 90, where Gaza burst into tears. It's all right as long as you observe the rules. No bombing, no heavy petting, no discreet weeing in the shallow end. And during the second half, you have to wear pyjamas and retrieve a black rubber brick. A bit of mud can occasionally help, though. Here's an idea for Bobby Gould. Pick mud as your captain. And now for the best goal you'll never see. This is also the occasion when Liz Hurley did a full frontal streak in the 6-yard box, but pity it happened when the stadium was double booked with a Pink Floyd concert, and Cesar Luis Minotti was on the bench. It begs the question, why can't they film Last of the Summer Wine in conditions like this? In this game, it poured so heavily that they had to get Remy Moses to part the waters. Eventually, the pitch was flooded to a depth of 6 feet, and the Germans still won. They sent on their sub. Where were we? Oh yes, mad players. Here's the episode when Basil was released from hospital too soon and met a German who'd done the same thing. These two players, unfortunately, had been out the night before with Stan Collymore. But maybe that last clip holds a clue. Maybe there is a way forward, or rather backward, for the modern English game. And that is a return to traditional values, the values of fair play and honour, mixed with a liberal sprinkling of random acts of savage and unnecessary violence. Why bother trying to compete with the Continentals with their flair and technique when you can just kick lumps out of them? But is this an art that we've lost sight of? I don't think so. These fellows here, for instance, haven't been in a car crash. They've just returned from playing in David Batty's testimonial. Doctor, busy night?
I should say so. 2 busted kneecaps, 6 muscle strains, 3 cases of severe ligament damage, and a broken eye socket. And that's just Darren Anderton. Then there's David Ginola with sprained hair, and Stan Collymore with a bruised fist.
See? There are still hard men in the English game. Young players today have different values. These ones are typical. Bickering over a sarong. Now this is a proper fight. In Brazil, it's more handbag racing. Romario does all right here, and so did his manager, Junior. But quite honestly, you wouldn't fancy them against Felicity Kendall.
No meio do tumulto, Romário é atingido no olho. O juiz expulsa Cafezinho do Madureira e o técnico Júnior. A tarde, que seria de festa, acaba em vexame.
There are still one or two brave souls determined that physical strength will remain a vital part of British football. This player was booked, but also received a community action reward. This tackle was so late that out of force of habit, the referee booked Paul Ince. Actually, I think it was Ince's fault. Mind you, you've got to be careful about who you pick to have a scrap with. Never pick anybody who's a member of Motorhead. And remember the golden rule, never strike until you can feel the whites of their eyes.
And the hard work. His side is certainly superior.
This bloke was actually shoved so far off the pitch he needed his passport to get back in.
It was Travis who was pushed right over the hoardings.
Always make your instructions to players clear. This bloke got the wrong end of the stick when he was told to go and mark the big pole. In Albania, quality farmland is at such a premium that players who abuse it are quickly dealt with by the relevant authorities. There's a genuine fear that other countries are getting ahead of us in the hardness stakes. For instance, this incident won the Colombian Fair Play Award for 1997. Not a gun in sight. And this for the team photo. And here in the Italian league, this is definitely what you'd call an on-the-ball incident. That bloke now makes a living in the Emlyn Hughes role in Una Questione dello Sport.
Oh dear. That'll make your mouth and your eyes water. Dear me.
Oh yeah, it would have done.
Bad news for football, but good news for music. Liverpool's Spice Boys get a soprano. And two become one.
Right, Mr. Bilic, I'll just test your reflexes.
Of course, it wasn't like that in the old days. In those days, if a player got kicked, he kicked back. Liverpool was so disgusted by this incident between Jimmy Case and Graham Souness that they bought Graham Souness. He later went on to fight Marvin Hagler for the WBO title. These were the days, of course, before highly trained physiotherapists and trainers. In those days, if you were injured, they'd look for the nearest man with a cloth cap and a fag.
And I think it's they are probably consoling Mick Mills because maybe
the world was a simpler place. A couple of bags of chips and a light ale, and Bill Garner was right as rain.
Sympathetic applause for Bill Garner as he goes off.
Although he couldn't play on. In those days too, keepers would happily head their own post to keep their team out of trouble. Unfortunately, in this case, the keeper woke up and found he was still playing for Huddersfield Town.
Must have hit his head on the post as he pushed that one away.
Finding Greenough. And a lovely ball by Greenough to Eastham lurking on the far side.
Here's a similar incident involving Bob Wilson. You'd think a collision with a stiff wooden object like that would have been very nasty, but the post doesn't seem to care.
He's caught his nose on the post.
Bob was hard too, though. He didn't complain, and yet that was the worst nasal damage suffered by an Arsenal player until Paul Merson joined the club. Incidentally, Bob, if you want to up your ratings, can I suggest banging your head against a post at the start of every show? It's really upsetting when no one will pass to you. This game was stopped for a moment and all the players were told to play nicely. David was still upset though. This is
David Geddes.
He's the worst! He's the worst! To their credit, most players don't complain. They know football's a dangerous game, especially if you get drawn to play an FA Cup tie on Salisbury Plain. And here, Manchester United actually got a dead player down by the corner flag. Look.
But the pressure
Strangely enough, he's the only one that Alex Ferguson was willing to release for England duty.
Nice touch. That was coupled with a header.
These were golden days for football, where Man United played like this every week. This match is actually still waiting to finish. Man United at 83-15 down, and Alex Ferguson's still tapping his watch. There's still time for another 60-odd penalties.
Couldn't hold it. Armstrong, it seemed, had the chance of an open goal and didn't hit it really well. And in the end, it was Greenough who had to turn it into the net.
He had to. And here, Keith Weller in the days when goalkeepers could pick up back passes, but didn't bother. The worst own goal since he asked his hairdresser to give him a Kevin Keegan perm.
Goal, an individual goal which won him the Goal of the Season award.
But not a patch on this hairstyle.
Garwood's kick. Darwin gets in there.
This bloke was later transferred to the Stylistics. And when he retired, like many players, he got a job at the BBC as a microphone.
What an amazing thing here.
What's that, lassie? Down by the big canyon? A player injured? Follow you?
Because this fella is going to... No, he decided against it. But who on earth brings a dog to a game like this?
Well, only Freddie Shepherd and Douglas Hall.
Poor old chap. But what it also means is that there's a delay, and goodness knows the nerves are twanging a little bit out there amongst the players.
Luckily, a member of Flintlock was on hand to save the dog. And while we're in the 70s, let's not forget the hardest team of all, the invincible Leeds United, who were hampered only by a goalie who played as if he was in his 70s. Gary Sprake, who was known as Ina Sharples because he always had his head in a net. But for every thesis, there's always an antithesis. Let's look at this clip from the days when they were trying out the experimental concrete ball. Hold on. Isn't that the young Alan Bates winning the first of 3 BAFTAs for his performance as the foul forward? Yeah, all right, mate, you've got the penalty. No, you can't have 2 penalties. Oh, my God.
Incredible affair. Goalkeepers penalised twice.
Oh, look, Margaret Rutherford. What the game really needs...
Could you poke your tongue out and say "ah," please?
Oh, right, I'm sorry about this.
Could you say "ooh," please? Could you say "ooh, ah, Cantona"?
Not without being sick, no, not really. Now, what the game really needs is to return to traditional values, a different era, the 70s, for instance, when men were men and ties were kipper and sex wasn't ever really mentioned except in carry-on films.
Could you drop your trousers, please?
Why?
Because it gets a cheap laugh.
Oh, of course.
Stevenage versus Woking. Oh, I said to sign Graham Ricks, not Brian Ricks. This bloke's trousers have come down quicker than George Michael's in a public toilet. Bradford City have invested in a set of Crystal Palace shorts. They keep going down. And they're hard to keep up. This scene confused many ex-England players who thought it was Graham Taylor giving a team talk. Patrick Kluivert may be very rich, he may be very young, he may be very brilliant at football, but he's just the same as the rest of us. See? Gets his pants at M&S.
Edmundo retribui o passe e Ramon aumenta. Vasco 2-0.
Now this is truly remarkable footage. This is actually a Brazilian manager who became so incensed at a sending off that he took his clothes off. Curiously, in fact, that's the same excuse David Pleat gave when he was arrested. But if anything, this is more amazing. You've seen the away strip, now the compulsory strip. This is Fiorentina v Milan, when the fans invaded the pitch and forced the players to take their clothes off. In fact, these aren't fans, this is the reserve team. And this is exactly the sort of thing that happens when the reserves play straight after the first team and you've only got one kit between them. The game ended up as vests v pants. I wonder if it's a coincidence that my old gym teacher, Mr. Hargreaves, was the ref that day.
Claudio.
Oh, hello, Mr. Hargreaves. Mr. Hargreaves, if it's raining, can we play Pirates? The trouble is that during the course of this video, I can't help feeling that we've only really approached some of the problems that are affecting football. There are so many other afflictions. Here we have the diabetic ward, full of convalescing Spurs fans. They have an aversion to sugar. And here, the ear, nose and throat ward, only kept open thanks to the generosity of Vinnie Jones, who actually donated many of the ears, noses and throats. Looks like he finally caught up with Gary Lineker.
Graham Taylor again. The most important thing for football is that any changes we do make need to be fundamental and not merely cosmetic ones.
I am not an elephant. I'm a human being.
Now calm down, Mr. Dowie. Here are your peanuts and buns.
Thank you. You're very kind.
What is the world coming to? Here's Inzaghi of Juventus, either sporting a new lip guard or auditioning for a lead role in the next Andrew Lloyd Webber musical. No, I said shin pad.
Slightly different style for Luton, a more orthodox front player than Brian Steen. Prefers perhaps the ball in the air, and a goal! John Bailey, a complete freak.
I think that's a little harsh on John. I mean, he's no oil painting, but then again, he's no Eric Gates either.
Bailey from inside his own half. Out came Finlay, bemused by the bounce.
This is KR Reykjavik, celebrating their Milk Cup win by pouring milk over their heads. Sadly, this tale has a tragic end. The following year, when they won the Rumbelows Cup, 2 players were fatally injured when the manager dropped a fridge freezer on their heads. Still, at least it wasn't the Beezer Holmes Cup. Of course, there are any number of short-term solutions. We could get Alex Ferguson a proper watch, for instance. For the Borough squadder, a month's stay in the Betty Ford Clinic for the Chelsea dressing room. An English phrase book. For Glenn Hoddle, an attack of writer's block. For Graham Kelly, a personality implant. And for David Pleat, a faster car. Or we could let Sky get a stranglehold on the game, allow a massive influx of foreign players, and gradually squeeze the life out of the smaller clubs. It's worked so far. But then, the future will look like this. Yes, it's George Graham's ideal team, a team of robots winning the Robot World Cup final. Sadly, the Ronaldo robot blew up just before the game. You might recognise a couple of them. I think that's K9, isn't it? And one of these definitely won the Great Egg Race. Still, at least the keeper's more mobile than Ian Walker. Thankfully, though, football is still a human game, although humans have human failings. And Graham Kavanagh has now left Hippopotamus for the cuddly elephant from Coventry City, played by lank-haired Crossroads beauty, Miss Diane.